And hello, we are live. Hello,
Hello,
hello.
hello.
We are live at For Fork's Sake tonight, October 26th, the night before Thanksgiving here in the States. And welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Tonight we're going to be discussing cultural food and the family table. So we're going to be talking a lot about the kinds of foods that we ate growing up and whether we like that or not. So we're going to go around and introduce ourselves and talk about what we're eating. I'll start. My name is Dawn Alden, and Danny Bryant and I started this because we are both involved with investigating our relationship to food, and my angle on it was it drove me crazy to see the way that food was marketed to women and the body types that women were expected to fit into. So I thought we should. I thought that I wanted to discuss it, but I had no idea about how to do it. And then I saw Danny online through Knife and Fork, and I thought that's the gal I want to work with. So that's how this was born. And tonight I am honoring my German heritage a little bit. I've got, this is Rotkohl und Apfel, red cabbage and apples. Mm-hmm. And these are some little tiny Würstchens. They're regular Bavarian bratwurst in little mini form. So who's next?
Delicious.
Yay.
Mm-hmm. Danny, you want to go next?
Sure. So hello, my name is Danny. I'm having some internet trouble, so if I disappear, just keep on rolling. Just keep on doing it. I'm here in Chicago. I'm actually dog sitting. I heard you guys oohing and awing about my backdrop.
Yeah.
I don't own the backdrop. And I'm having a little like veggie brown rice extravaganza. Oh, can you see it? It's really hard. There we go. To get ready for all the carbs I'm gonna stuff in my face tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I'm the founder of Knife and Fork, and I create plays mostly about our relationship to food and the body.
All right. Caitlin, you want to go?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Caitlin. I'm here speaking to you from Brooklyn, New York. I guess I'll give a little bit more of my food history. I just recently did a couple of internships in Michelin star restaurants in Bilbao, Spain. The first one was Nerua, and that's in the Guggenheim, and the second one is called Mina. Backing up a little bit, I studied law, and I've always loved food, but I didn't know how I wanted to work with it and whether I wanted to be cooking in the kitchen or writing. And now I'm just doing a little bit of both. I just did these internships, and now I'm working on my blog and freelance writing from New York. And tonight I am eating something, it's like a bit of Spanish and American tradition because, let's see if you can see it, it's a Spanish tortilla, which is made in the traditional like Spanish tortilla way. It's like a potato omelet, but in honor of Thanksgiving, and I love sweet potatoes, I use sweet potatoes instead.
Nice.
And I'm having a beet salad, and I made a little bit of alioli too to go with it. So I got a little bit fancy for you guys.
Nice. Who's up? Psyche, you want to go?
Yeah, sure, I'll go. Hi, I'm Psyche Williams-Forson, and I bring you greetings from Maryland, where it is cold and rainy. And I'm an associate professor at the University of Maryland in the Department of American Studies. So shout out to them. And actually, because it's 8 o'clock on the East Coast, I've already eaten, so I am bringing you a delicious protein bar. This is the sort of dessert. I'm on the dessert end, and a bit of coffee since I'm really tired and it's been a long day, entertaining friends and everything. So we ate earlier today. So I study food, mostly African American, but Black communities generally. So I'm excited to talk to you all a little bit and share and hear some things about about Black food cultures.
Awesome. Awesome. Jocelyn, how about you?
Okay. Hi. So where do I start? I'm out here in Southern California at the edge of LA County, in a little tiny town called Claremont. It's known for, it's called the City of Trees and PhDs because there's a private college here. I'm a landscape architect in training. I'm working on getting my license, and I do landscape design. I'm also a bit of a foodie. I love to cook. I grew up with a lot of different food in my life, and I've traveled a little bit, so yeah. For dinner, I had the crock pot going all day, which was really hard to deal with when you're at home. Usually I put stuff in the crock pot and I leave and I don't come back, but I made chicken tortilla soup in the crock pot. Big heaping bowl. I don't know if you guys can see it. Kind of piled and all sorts of goodies on top. So, yeah.
Nice. Nice. Very cool. All right. So let's start with what kind of foods did you eat growing up? Not all of us sat around a traditional American table, and what exactly does that mean as well? But what kind of foods did you eat growing up? Psyche, why don't you start?
Yeah, sure. Well, I grew up in Buffalo, New York, so would love to be there right now with all that snow. but but my parents brought the South with them, so we had a lot of traditional Southern food. And then I don't know, sometime around the time when I was about 4 or 5, my dad was diagnosed with diabetes. So that meant we had to adjust our diet. And then that was compounded really because my dad's a minister. So, you know, in Black church traditions, you always have like meals and things after church, right? So
right, yeah.
we did, you know, so we ate a lot heavier when I was like 2 and 3, and then later on, or I say 4 or 5, and then later on we scaled back. So at a very early age, we started eating wheat bread, and you know, we'd have tuna nights, and you know, lots of salad night, and so we were doing all of that kind of thing pretty early in my upbringing and childhood. And then later moved back to the South, moved back to Virginia, and that kind of, you know, just persisted. So I have a pretty, you know, northern, southern palate, but then for 15 years I was married to a man who was Ghanaian. So then that entered another kind of palate, right, in African, West African foods. So
right.
I'd like to say it's a West African.
And for those of us who aren't familiar with what makes
West
up West
African?
African,
Sure.
yeah, what is that? What
So
kind of spices
a lot,
and-
yeah, well, a lot of spices, but also Liberians, Ghanaians, Cote d'Ivoire, any West Coast, West African coastal people do a lot of rice, which was a surprise for me. That was one of the biggest changes. But similar to like New Orleans culture, they have a staple of tomato, pepper, and onion as a base. And they do a lot of soups and a lot of sauces. So I have found, for example, when we used to travel and it was difficult for my husband to find something to eat, if we could get to Chinese American restaurant, right, where you have vegetables and sauces or meat and a sauce and rice, that was sort of similar to what he was used to.
Interesting. Yeah.
I'm from East Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could talk about my southern, a little bit of Polish, but some of my most actual vivid memories of eating as a child, because it was just me and my mom, is that we were always on a diet. So when I think of what I ate as a child, it's like the millions of different fad diets that we tried from me 10 to 18. I have a vivid memory of cantaloupe at one point. Just so much cantaloupe. So that's what I remember most. My mother would probably be horrified if I said that. But it is. I like, and it's also what most of my work is about, so that's why I feel a lot of sense memory around that. But I do remember a lot of some like Polish inspired stuff too, galumpkies and schnitzels and
Very cool. Very cool. How about you, Caitlin? What did you eat growing up?
In my house growing up, I think I'm going to be the boring one here. We did a lot of just typical American dishes. My mom was the one that cooked dinner often, and she was a working mom, but she also would come home and cook dinner. And she made a lot of like meat, starch, and vegetable. Sometimes it was a canned vegetable. Sometimes it was like peas from a can or green beans from a can. But then she would make like a piece of beef, potatoes, and then a vegetable. Or she used to love making like, she made a lot of lasagna. I think that's like an Irish American thing. Like Irish American people love making lasagna, even though it's like Italian. So she made a
Caitlin,
lot.
did you eat a lot of canned spinach? Do you remember canned spinach?
Oh my God, I loved the cream canned spinach too. That was like a delicacy, and the cream corn also. That was like special night.
Nice.
Made like a lot of stews and pot roasts growing up. And nowadays, like when I go home, like even I notice my mom's like our diet at home has changed. When I go back to my family home, we do a lot more like, you know, seasonal things, fresh fish, or like a salad with arugula more so. But growing up, very traditional American.
Very cool. Jocelyn, how about you? What did they eat in Claremont?
Well, actually, I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area, and food that I had growing up was pretty varied. My grandma did most of the cooking at home. My grandma lived with us, and had my family's Chinese Indonesian, so I grew up with Indonesian food. But then also American food. So like one day we'll have like a soup or a stew, and then the next day I'll have tuna casserole.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. And sometimes for breakfast, you know, we would have like leftover spaghetti instead of the traditional eggs, you know, eggs and toast and things like that. And other times we'd have rice for breakfast, and so it was pretty varied.
Interesting. And what enlighten me? What is the sort of staples of an Indonesian food palette?
Lots of coconut, rice,
Okay.
rice. Kind of similar to Thai food. Let's see.
Okay.
Yeah.
So coconuts, rice, curries.
Curry, yeah, lemongrass, lots of chili. Like more chili than I can handle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm curious, as a follow-up, how do we see kind of our childhood diet staples integrated into how we eat now, or do we at all? Are there still colors of that from your childhood, or have we kind of developed our own way of eating with our families?
It's interesting. Okay, I just dropped out there. Sorry about that. Are we all back in?
I'm back.
Okay. Caitlin's back, Danny's back, Jocelyn's back. We lost Psyche. Oh my goodness. Server issues.
Do we want to pick back up on that one little question? Or Dawn,
Yeah.
did you talk much about your childhood stuff? Maybe how, because clearly you're making it today.
Exactly. Let me just re-invite. There we go.
There we go. I'm back.
There she is. Hallelujah. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Server error.
Okay.
My mom was German. Grew up in Germany and only came over to the States when she married my dad. But she also she also lived for several years in England and in France, and she nannied in both places. And so when she came, and she loved to cook, and so when she came over to the States and raised us, she was cooking mostly German, English, and French food.
Oh, okay.
So all of which were very, not very spicy, and a lot of sort of potato bases and white sauces, and rich meats like beef, some pork. Germans eat some pork, schnitzel, things like that. So I ate a lot of that, but then of course we also had, Lucky Charms cereal and stuff like that. The one thing that my mom brought with her from Germany was she hated künstlich, what she called künstlich food, which is artificial food.
Mm-hmm.
So we never had really sugary things. We never had soda in the house.
Mm-hmm.
She wouldn't buy pre-packaged sweets. If we had cookies, they were homemade. And for cereals, we generally had granolas. Occasionally, she would splurge and get us like Lucky Charms or something, but that was a rare treat. And I think more than the types of food that I eat, it's that sensibility that has very much stayed with me. Even though I cook a lot spicier now, I actually cook a lot of East Asian food. I love cooking Indian food, and I love the rich curries and chipotle chili spices and stuff like that. I don't drink soda. The only sweets really that I indulge in is dark chocolate, and that's kind of an addiction. But I like fresh foods, freshly made. I mostly cook for myself. I don't buy a lot of prepackaged foods, and things that are overly artificial that taste like they could stay on the shelf for several years. They just make me ill.
What was that? What was the word that your mom used to use?
Künstlich.
Künstlich. I love it.
It's artificial. Yeah.
So okay, cool. So that's, Dawn, how you've kind of integrated your kind of cultural stuff as a child. Anybody else?
Well, I mean, we had a really diverse palate. When you guys were talking earlier, I was thinking, yeah, I grew up on, some tuna casserole with peas and, cheese in it and stuff like that. But, I also have really vivid memories of, my parents come from a social work background, so I at times, they were underemployed, maybe unemployed, or both employed, or not. One is working, one's not, So I also do remember, and I very rarely ever talk about this, but only because I don't have the occasion to, of sucking my thumb for a long period of time. And I remember hearing my mom say once she thinks I started because I was hungry. So I didn't really realize that I had an experience of hunger and of some levels of what we call today food insecurity, right?
Right, yeah.
So we did receive government cheese. And so I remember cheese in a block, long blocks of cheese. Now, those memories, they fade, they come in, they come out. I mean, but I don't really ever hardly think much about what I integrate in my current food culture too much, because I feel to some extent I've eaten the same way all my life. Fresh food, some things packaged, added to fresh things. So my daughter loves oodles and noodles, you add some broccoli and you add some spinach, and now she has, and tomatoes maybe, and now she keeps it moving, I remember when she was in one of her daycares, and they told us the kids couldn't have Lunchables, and I felt really offended by that. Because there are different ways that you can prepare a Lunchable and make it economical and make it quick for a working mother, and also make it nutritious. So to totally tell us you can't have Lunchables, I felt, Lunchable Gate or something. So I wanted to go on a protest. But so I feel like I've sort of, the only time I did something really different was when I decided I was going to be a vegetarian for a while, and it worked out okay. And I made tofu burgers for my family. This was pre Morningstar Farms and all that stuff, and they were like, no, we don't like that. But now many of them are vegetarian, so it comes and goes in our family.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Jocelyn? What of your food traditions growing up have you kept in your sort of regular day-to-day routines? Oh, we lost you. We lost your microphone again. All right, Caitlin, why don't you go ahead and take that while Jocelyn gets reconnected?
For me, a lot of those childhood foods are like comfort foods, like the lasagna or having the stew, or like my mom would make a beautiful leg of lamb. And to me nowadays, like generally I'm cooking for myself and a couple people if I'm cooking. So the idea of making like a big dish like that, I don't do it that much. So for me, that's like it is comfort. And what you were saying, Dawn, about like the junk food and not having that a lot growing up, that definitely resonates with me. I remember my mom sometimes, if she didn't have a lot of time, she would get fast food. And for us, we thought that was like a present, that was like a treat. But for her, it was just like, I don't have time for this. I have to like do something quick. So we didn't have it that much, but when we did, it was like a special thing. And still, like, I do that now. Like, I try to make things fresh as much as possible, and not just do like too much like fast food. Just everything in proportion. Once in a while, though, you gotta have it.
Yeah, yeah. Jocelyn, are you with us now? Oh, we still can't hear you. Damn it.
Oh no.
Oh,
I'm curious about the Lunchables and why they outlawed the Lunchables in school.
Yeah, the Lunchable thing was because, similar to what you all are saying, they felt like it was packaged food, and they were trying to get the kids to, everything was outlawed. You had to have almost permission to bring, like if the kids were celebrating a party, because, so many children today, because of our food supply, so many kids have allergies, right? And so you couldn't have anything homemade. Everything had to be from the store. You couldn't have Lunchables. You couldn't bring, cookies. You couldn't bring different things. So it was really, I thought, over the top and very much food policing,
Yeah.
And again, I felt very, I felt very offended by it, as if parents did not and could not make the best choices for their families, even if that meant sometimes packing, a Lunchable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many years ago was this?
Oh, this was, let me see, my daughter's 10. I think she was 3 or 4, so about 7 years ago.
Yeah. I'm curious if I'm wondering if they still do it. I work in arts education a lot, and I was recently around several different schools around Halloween, and all the schools had outlawed candy.
Oh, yeah.
So on Halloween they do like stickers, but you couldn't do candy. And I thought that was very interesting.
I think I think we live in such a, and I know we're going to talk about this at the end, but I'm working on a project on, my next book is on food policing. And food shaming. And I just think we're living in such a militarized state on so many levels that it has actually reached the point of food. And, not letting kids bring candy for Halloween, we have all my daughter's candy here. We really don't eat it. It was really the whole fun of the thing, And people come in and they stop right there and they look and they're like, oh, I may take a piece of gum or whatever the case may be, or Twizzler or whatever, and keep it moving. But to I think, to police children in that way, and in the reality, they're policing adults, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also, it can have a bad effect or the opposite effect. Because I remember when I was younger, the kids that always had to eat like carrot sticks and celery, when they would see candy, their eyes would light up and they would go crazy.
Right.
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 The forbidden fruit aspect. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was a week in undergrad where I think I existed entirely on Pop-Tarts and coffee. So I certainly had my rebellion period against all that healthy food that I had growing up. But I eventually came round to it again, especially as I start to get older and my body's more sensitive to everything that you put into it. Yeah.
Right.
I'm very curious about kids and the mixed messages that they get a lot from, like, that they're, if we hear that they're the fattest children ever through the media, then they must also be hearing, through the grapevine, regardless if anyone is directly saying, hey, did you know that you're the fattest children in the history of time? Like, how that must be really confusing that they're getting all sorts of mixed messages about what it means to be healthy and taking away their candy. And I think it's probably a pretty confusing time for kids and their relationship with food.
Yeah.
It's a sad time. It really is. It's a sad time, I think.
Caitlin, you said that you had some experience with looking at what children overseas were having for breakfast and things like that. What do you see in terms of a compare and contrast between how children in Spain approach food as opposed to American children? Is there a sense of food policing over there at all, or is there enough of is the cuisine so unified that there is no need to because everybody eats the same thing, or what's the sitch?
I mean, what you just said, the last thing is definitely, to me, the distinction between American food and Spanish food. I worked in public school for 2 years in Spain, and the teachers ate the same thing as the students were eating, and it was just an actual, and I'm talking about for lunch, but it was like an actual meal. Like, they had rice and they had fish on the bone, and they were sitting there and filleting like the fish off the bone and having vegetables and milk and maybe an apple for dessert. And I think things might have, I don't know, they haven't gotten that much better. And in some schools I know in the United States, like, things have improved, but I remember my lunch growing up, I usually had like a bagel and a Snapple and called it a day, or like just had the school lunch. It was just like nothing. It wasn't like real food. And in Spain, the kids just from a small age, they're eating what their parents eat, and there isn't the culture of like, punishing the kids or forcing them to eat vegetables, because it's just never a question. Like, there's not like baby food and like kids food and then adult food. So, I mean, I think now one thing that, we should really focus on in the States is just teaching kids to eat normal food and the same things that their parents are eating.
Well, do you think that, I don't have children, so I wondered, do you think that there is as much of a divide between children's food and adults' food, or do you think it's more family specific? So like, within this family, what the adults eat, the kids eat, but that's very different from this family where the adults and kids both eat something different.
It could be, and I think nowadays in general things are changing just because food is just such a mainstream topic. Like, my 10-year-old niece, she loves watching Chopped, and she loves watching Food Network, and she had her 5th birthday party at like a sushi restaurant, or like they went out after the party or something. And kids are just introduced to food and like gourmet food and cooking food at a younger age.
So all the time, yeah.
But then it depends culturally. Also, because some of the studies that I've done and in classes that I've visited, particularly in our area in Maryland, where you have a number of immigrant children who come and are second or third generation, but mostly second, To your point, Caitlin, they are feeling the pressure to assimilate. And so, that's where, for example, you might get some of that food shaming because they're bringing food from home, which was left over from last night's dinner, but then they open the top and everybody wants to know what it is, or why does it smell this way, or whatever the case may be. Well, who wants all of that when you're trying to eat lunch?
Right.
So I had a colleague tell me not long ago his children didn't experience that. Well, I mean, absolutely no offense, but his children are white, and so his children being white eating, tikka masala is not the same as being Southeast Asian eating tikka masala.
Right.
So he sort of dismissed my point and said, well, my kids don't have that problem, and therein lies the issue in part, right? And so race and class and caste gets really tied into these conversations at a much different pace than they did when we were kids.
Right.
Just one other really quick point. My daughters told me that their gym teacher, weighed them and then started telling the kids, "You're overweight," in front of the other kids. And then just said to all of them, so many of you are obese. You're not even going to make it to 20. And I just, I didn't. Normally I'm up in arms about these things, but so many things go on that you have to pick your battles. But she and I had to kind of work through that, But just can you imagine being told that as a kid at 10 or as a girl who's starting menarche, and so you're thinking you're large, but in reality you're retaining water because, you're at this hormonal stage in your life. And so it's a dangerous time out there for kids and adults as well, I think, around food.
Yeah, and if like Danny, you were getting these messages growing up that women are always supposed to be on a diet.
Yeah.
So, what if that's what you're experiencing at home, and then you go into school and one of your teachers accuses you of being obese? It's like,
yeah.
Well, so I have some family friends, and one of the daughters is a teenager, and in school, in like health class, they're starting to do a lot more food nutrition, but that is causing a lot of anxiety, a lot of food anxiety, where she was coming home as like, maybe she was in 8th grade, coming home and kind of shaming her parents for cooking regular potatoes and not sweet potatoes,
Yes.
So there's this anxiety that is getting, misused as like teaching kids how to be healthy, but they're approaching it in that way of like, watch out or you're going to be dead by 20.
Yeah.
And I think that's really doing a lot of harm and causing a lot of anxiety amongst kids.
Right, and God knows there are so many mixed messages from the media that, even trying to sift through them for the appropriate truth as an adult is hard enough. To expect 8 to 10-year-olds to do that is just unrealistic. So yeah, I want to check and see if Jocelyn is back. Can you
guys hear me okay?
Yay!
Yay!
Hallelujah! So let's loop back and just talk a little bit about sort of your histories with food traditions. How did what you ate as a kid, did you keep that as you grew up? Did you change, because you traveled quite a bit and you lived abroad for a while? Did you change?
So I don't really cook a lot of Indonesian food because it's actually very time consuming. So if I have time, then I might make it and pull up a recipe that I really like making. But most of the times it's stuff that my mom makes when I come home to visit. So it's kind of more of a special thing to me. For example, cooking certain stews, like you have to cook the meat and boil it in a pot for like a whole day for it to really become tender and absorb all the different flavors, So since I'm so busy, it's like I don't have time to do stuff like that. In the middle of college, I spent a year abroad in Japan and ended up picking up a lot of I just ate my way through it. The people there in Japan they love to eat. Like when you travel, you always ask people the number one question of what is the local food and what should I eat? And it's almost like down to like a specific ingredient, like a certain apple or a certain sweet potato, you know, or and the area that I lived in, their their ramen was really popular, and then a type of fish roe was really popular. But I ended up picking up a lot of cultural like food from there, and that's a little bit easier to cook. So I do a lot of that. But I kind of I like a lot of variety in food, and so a lot of times I'll try experimenting and looking at new ingredients and really trying to, I don't know, get out there, because I find getting stuck in like one, you know, just like a certain process of food is like it's kind of boring, and I don't know, I like the variety and the challenge with new ingredients.
And do you find that you can find the ingredients that you want to use here in the States now that you're back in the States? Because it sounds like a lot of the stuff that you ate over there was very local.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm like craving Japanese food that I want to make, there's actually supermarkets here. I mean, the one thing that I love about California, and especially like here and in San Francisco, is that access to specific ingredients is actually pretty easy. It's not too hard. We're very fortunate that we have markets of different cultures, you know, and we can just go there and buy it. So, yeah, I forgot the.
Yeah. No, I mean we both live in and around LA, so we have access to a lot more food options than we would if we lived in, you know, a small town in the middle of the Midwest or something like that. Although the internet, you know, you can order an amazing amount of food.
Yeah, you can order stuff on the internet. And I mean, I was thinking, you know, how food on TV has become really popular. Like if you're watching Chopped or something, like they bring in all these really unusual ingredients that we don't see today, but maybe in another culture it's actually an ingredient that's very common with them. Like bulgur, for example. I've never cooked with bulgur, but it's like this random item on Chopped that you see all the time, but you can find bulgur at like the like at John's.
Yeah.
Is that a supermarket, John's?
Yeah, it's a.
Okay.
I don't know if it's Lebanese. It's like a Mediterranean market, so you can get lavish bread and lentils and I don't know, a lot of different like Mediterranean flavors there. So.
Yeah, I remember that I got a cookbook that had a recipe for a certain Indian dish that I really wanted to make, but it called for a type of leaf that I'd never heard of. So I Googled all of the Indian food markets in LA area and called them and asked them if they had this leaf, and one of them did. So I just drove over, you know, down North Hollywood over to Van Nuys, and there's this fantastic Indian grocery store. And I walk in, and, you know, here I am, the white chick, and I walk in and I ask the guy for this particular type of leaf, and he goes into the freezer, the walk-in freezer, and he brings me out a plastic baggie of these leaves that they had frozen. So this is like someone has a plant that he knows that harvests these leaves, and they keep them out of the public eye, but if you walk in and you ask for them, then you can get them. And I was like, this is amazing. This is
You
amazing.
remember the name of the leaf? I like now have to know what the name is.
I'll have to look it up. I can't remember it right off the top of my head right now. But yeah, I'd never heard of it before. It was pretty awesome, and it has a great flavor. It's got this like almost smoky flavor, and it is very distinctive. Like when I made this dish with this leaf, it was like I have never tasted this spice combination before. So yeah, it was really worth the trip. It was very cool.
I bet you got a lot of street cred for that. He was like, this girl knows what's up.
Either that or he's like, oh, these hipsters.
Caitlin, how do you find in the restaurants that you've been working in how kind of the cultural heritage or the family heritage of the chef works its way into the menu? Because I feel like a lot of restaurants are created from the point of view usually of a person, and if they're heavily influenced, or if everyone's kind of cultural heritage gets to influence the menu.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think in all of the places I've worked, the chefs are definitely influenced by their history, but it's so connected to like the land. Like the French restaurant where I was working, and the land and just like the traditional food there, but they all take traditional things like the restaurant I was working in Paris, for instance. He was a very classically trained French chef, but he was a young guy and doing like bringing all these new kind of like local food movement concepts and making things accessible to everyone. Like it wasn't something that only rich, like a restaurant where only rich people could eat at. But he was, you know, using the history of the food he had learned and just making it accessible and kind of almost like democratizing it
Yeah.
for the general public. And the same thing, like the two, and I worked in two Spanish restaurants, and both chefs were just very passionate about the food, their food traditions and the local things, like knowing the people at the market and knowing the fishermen and knowing where everything came from, and taking, you know, the things that they had learned from growing up and using that and reinterpreting it in more of a modern way, like modern gastronomy way.
But Caitlin, I'm wondering, how much do you think, and you may not know this, I wonder how much of that is based on that's what's hip right now versus, you know, that's, I mean, because, I mean, it is. This is what's hip. I mean, everything you just said, all those words, local and democratization of food and, you know, back to the land and heritage. I mean, it's all, it's like farm to table. Everything is farm to table. Everything is local. Everything is organic. You know, it's a running theme right now. And if you're not that, in some ways, you sort of push yourself out of the market, you know, because that's what people want to believe they're eating, and that's what people want to think about. And not to say that these folks aren't actually passionate about these things, but you know, I have a colleague who's working on some of these issues in Italy about how slow food is being received and the differences between those who live in the country and those who are coming back to the land, and the sort of tensions, because these tensions run deep when you start thinking about, we're talking consumption, but what about production? You know, and who's doing the work that brings these sort of local and organic and fresh and so forth to the table? You know, not just those who are cooking it, but those who are actually harvesting it. You know, there's this whole production chain that we tend to overlook because we're so focused on the consumption end and the glamorization of that and what's hip at the moment. Right. So, I mean, I'm not at all discounting. What I'm saying is it's interesting to hear you saying that, because I think some of this is tied to marketing. If your restaurant is not preaching that story, that mantra, that sermon, then you're going to be, you know, you're not getting the clients in, I think.
Right. And I think
I'm just wondering what you all think about that.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. And I think, I mean, on one hand, there are trends that are not sustainable, like certain trends like foraging, for instance, where people are digging for roots and berries and nuts. Like, I think that's a trend that it's amazing, but people aren't going to be eating hay, like meat cooked on hay in 5 years from now, like they are now. It's not going to be. But this,
unless of course the zombies come.
The zombies, yeah. Okay.
In which case we'll all be foraging.
You're right.
We'll have to.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail that.
No, but the local and sustainable part, I mean, that's a trend that it's good for everyone. It's a good trend. So the more that there is of that, even if it's something that people are doing because it's trendy, I think it's better. And you make a good point that, like, I'm from upstate New York, and agriculture is the biggest industry up there, but yet farmers are struggling. And here we are in New York City where everyone's dying to eat locally, and there's something happening where there's no connect between the need and like the people that are producing. So I hopefully people will find a way to bring those together.
Right. It's a multi-layered process. That's one, I think, strand of it, that sort of local connect. But then there's another strand by which we have to remember that there are people globally who rely upon the monies that come out of the U.S. for their own sustainability of culture, right, and their own sustainability of life. And so the more we push local and exclude, those very communities that enable Jocelyn, for example, or you, Danny, to get that leaf, those things are imported. And so I think when I talk to people about this, I say we have to keep this conversation fluid. We can't all focus just on local food. We also have to look at the global world, because there are people, again, whose lifeways depend upon our consumption of their produced goods.
Right.
So you're right. But the reality is also, Caitlin, unfortunately, those small farmers will never be able to feed the world, right? They can feed small populations of people, but never be able to, unfortunately, feed the world. So then how do people eat in the meantime? How do we have this conversation on multiple levels so that lots of different people in different spaces can afford to eat well, can eat well, and can feed their families?
Yeah, nutritiously. Yeah, can feed their families nutritiously. Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and depending upon what nutrition means for them, right?
Right.
I was just saying, depending upon what nutrition means for them. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I want to just circle back to quickly is you mentioned, Psyche, you mentioned food insecurity growing up.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that has, how has that impacted your current food practices? The reason I ask is I'll tell my story, and then I'd love to hear yours. My mom grew up in Germany in the aftermath of World War II, so right. It was very difficult for them to survive, and she actually was she was the skinniest child of 5. So she was actually sent to a farm for a little while so that she would be able to eat enough to stay alive. So she was separated from her family at a very young age so that she could be in a place where there was enough food for her to eat. And she would tell stories to me about how how they made do with very little food. And one of the things I remember to the day that she died, she was very food insecure, and she never threw away food. If there were 4 peas left in the pot, she would put it in a Tupperware container and put it in the refrigerator. Right. And her pantries and her refrigerator were always packed to the brim. I mean, we were ready for the zombie apocalypse. We could have survived for years if we had to be locked up in our house, because she hoarded food.
Right.
And know that was a result of that incredible food insecurity.
Right. Uh-oh.
It's a little
choppy.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to jump in, Psyche?
Yeah. Okay, well, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. So, Psyche, I was asking you.
About the food insecurity. Yeah. You know what? Until you said that, I hadn't really thought a lot about it. But there are days I think I'm ready for the zombie apocalypse too. But I'm not filling over to the brim. But we often have stuff here that I could make food out of, that I could make stuff out of. But I tend to buy the same things over and over. And to your point, Caitlin, and so forth, it's always the fresh stuff because that's the stuff that goes quickly,
Right.
right? So I've had friends who say your house always has food, but not something you can grab. It always has to be stuff that has to be prepared. Unless, of course, it's summertime, then there's strawberries and other kinds of fruit and stuff like that. But, yeah, I feel like I hadn't really connected that to the food insecurity, but I think my sisters and me, we always have stuff in our refrigerator and in our cabinets. So should someone pop in unexpectedly, it wouldn't be a problem. So I guess that could be a result of that. It was a short period, but that period of food insecurity. But I hadn't really thought about it. So thanks for bringing that out because maybe it is connected.
Yeah, and my connection to that is I think of how much I abhor any sort of diet food. Like when I'm talking, like I was buying stuff for tomorrow, and I was like looking at the fat-free cheese, and I was like, what? How do they still sell fat-free cheese? And it's left over from then all the sugar-free stuff and all the kind of, those 100-calorie packs and all the kind of stuff that I just now have a visceral reaction to when I see it. But it hasn't been that long since I've had my, revolution against it. It's probably only been about 8 years.
So do you eat cantaloupe?
I do, but not that much. Only been a little fruit salad with brunch. I don't buy cantaloupe.
Oh, you don't buy cantaloupe, okay.
Nice.
That's
It
funny.
sounds like a good diet food though. When I think of bad diet foods, I think of did you do the lean cuisines ever in the family?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, those lean cuisine.
I mean, I ate those in college once in a while, and I'd be like, I'm being healthy. And now
Yeah.
Well, and it's so hard because I still always love the convenience of that food. And I'm single, and I don't have any kids, but I have a job where I'm just crazy all the time, and I often wish that there were more options for convenience food that didn't make me feel like crap, Maybe someday.
Yeah.
There you
we
go.
have Seamless now. We can just order online anything if you're in a big city, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
So true. Well, Miss Dawn, shall we begin to wrap it up? I thought it would be fun.
Yeah.
I thought it would be fun for everyone to say what they're doing tomorrow.
Ooh.
All right, Thanksgiving, yeah.
Yay.
I'll start. I'm going over to friends, and they have a son who is gluten-free, dairy-free, and nut-free except for coconut.
Wow.
So I'm making the mashed potatoes. So I'm making it with natural balanced soy-free butter, butter substitute, and coconut milk to make it creamy. Yeah.
Party
All
time.
right. Who else?
How about you?
Who'd you say?
I'm going to Friends. Yeah, I'm not cooking this year. I'm going to Friends. So 2 different friends. So a surprise awaits.
Nice. Nice. How about you, Jocelyn?
I'm going over to my boyfriend's family's place, so I'm actually not cooking. Well, I'm making cranberry. I make cranberry sauce, and then I've been assigned to make pumpkin cheesecake. So that's what I'm gonna do after this.
Nice, nice. How about you, Caitlin?
I'm going over to my brother's house tomorrow, and he lives 40 blocks away from me in Brooklyn. And he just got married to a Spanish girl, so it'll be her Thanksgiving, so it's going to be a very special cooking event. And it's his first hosting of Thanksgiving, so I'm excited for him. And he called me already and told me, I got a 7 to 8 pound organic turkey. Perfect. So I'll be making the sides.
I love it. And I'm also going to Friends. I don't know. This is awesome, I think, that none of us are making a turkey. For some reason, I don't know. My feminist spirit is like, yeah. Just do the sides. Great. Cool. So now do we want to do a little pitch of what are we working on? What are we doing? What's up next for each of us?
Absolutely. Yeah. Psyche, why don't you start? I know you said you were working on a book.
Yeah, I'm working on a book on food shaming and food policing in Black communities. And if all goes well, on Saturday I will be on a major talk show host show on MSNBC talking about food and race. So if you tune in around 11 o'clock, you may see me there. But
Nice.
yeah, food shaming and food policing in Black communities. So stay tuned for that.
Fascinating.
Is that 11 a.m. or
11
p.m.?
a.m. Yeah, the Melissa Harris Perry show.
And that's Eastern
Eastern Standard Time, MSNBC. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Cool. All right. Anybody else? How about you, Caitlin? Tell us about your blog.
Well, I'm continuing my blog, which started as a project, like a writing project when I was a lawyer, and then I decided to go for these culinary internships. So it started as a side project, and now it's just my main focus. So I'm writing a lot for the blog. Sorry?
What's the name?
It's
the
called
blog?
Back to Spain with a
okay.
2.
Oh, okay, cool.
So yeah, and I have like recipes and travel places, and I do like a questionnaire with different like chefs and other type of creative minds. And yeah, I just got back, so I'm figuring out next steps and doing some freelance writing. And I've got some ideas for a restaurant or small eatery in the works now, so I'll let everyone know when that comes.
Please do. Yes, please do. How about you, Jocelyn? Any projects coming up you want to share?
I'm just working on starting up my business as a landscape designer. So if anyone needs, consulting work, I'm out here and available.
Awesome. Awesome. How about you, Danny? I know you've always got a full plate.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm currently in development. I'm in early drafts of my next play, which is called Worthy, which is a play for young people, middle school, exploring how youth identity is affected by the media. So it's a modern fairy tale, using fairy tales as a lens to explore body image and gender identity for young people. So I'm really excited about it.
Very cool. Very cool. And I am still facilitating my my Predator Prey competition. It's a short film competition on the theme of Predator Prey, and it is for female filmmakers. The majority of the creative team behind each entry has to be women filmmakers, editors, camera, DPs, cinematographers, writers, and directors. Working on a bunch of other projects in various stages of development through my production company, Vicarious Films, vicariousfilms.com. So check it out. Yeah. And then continuing to keep these moving every month. So next month we're going to be talking about body modification surgeries. So yeah, so we're going to be tackling that topic, and we've got a couple of really interesting guests booked for it. That will be the last Wednesday of the month is unfortunately New Year's Eve. But if you decide to stay in, watch us live. If not, you can always catch the broadcast archived to the next day. You can watch it while you're nursing your hangover.
Great.
All right. If anyone else has any last-minute thoughts you want to throw in?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. It was great chatting with you. And I'm gonna click us off the air. But everybody, have a happy Thanksgiving.
All right. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Bye bye.